kicking back old school tracks like damn. Can't get enough of this more like I don't even know where I am. Ooh, baby, get hyped to the beat, let's go, cause this is our jam. This is our jam. Let's go. Let me break it down right quick for my haters, my dictators and bad raiders. Since you never seem to get it right no more, then right no more. Kick back your feet and watch your back from perpetrators. My game's strong in my Range Rover. I got the blackjack juice and my racks off the roof. And you see the SUV rolling up next to me, old enough to take you over Sesame. Remember, back when I was a kid, all I did was stroll back from the cold over South Bridge. My mama told me do no entiendo. All I ever heard was noise over my Nintendo. But when you get the chance to go up in this life, make sure that you take it, never ever think twice, yeah. And if you wanna get higher, pick up the mic and get to rapping, cause you're never getting higher. Yeah, in the front row, kicking back old school tracks like damn. Can't get enough of this more like I don't even know where I am. Ooh, baby, get hyped to the beat, let's go, cause this is our jam. This is our jam. Oh, yeah. In the front row, kicking back old school tracks like damn. Can't get enough of this more like I don't even know where I am. Ooh, baby, get hyped to the beat, let's zone, cause this is our jam. This is our jam. Oh. When I reminisce over you, my lordy, rest to make way for my newfound shorty. Checking the mic for ligaments while I reckon. Same time came out the womb while recording. All I ever did was make jokes out of suckers. Told them about the life that I live, mad ruckus. But if you never seen a grown man rock jewelry like me, jealous if it coming over you, then you bite me. All these other people, they be coolin' just like me. Talking about the homies and I usually right beat. Yeah, my crew is off the roof, and I told her not to brag about the crew, even though it's new. Even though it's new. Yeah, in the front row, kicking back old school tracks like damn. Can't get enough of this more like I don't even know where I am. Ooh, baby, get hyped to the beat, let's go, cause this is our jam. This is our jam.
Picture a youngin' that used to live for the summer, skip meals to go run amongst all his peers. Now fast forward up a few years, that giddy little kitty growed up and all of a sudden had to pay bills. My current dichotomy grown from pure curiosity. Guess I didn't know that part of the deal, or know how quick it get real. Feeling so fleeting, me and myself need a meeting to make it clearer. Conversate with the mirror, watch your language when talking to me. I'm the one that's with you. Speak some life in itself, you should opt in the optimism. When options turn into prisons, getting offered the slimmest pickings. Remember, this place we in is a thief for joy, to steal. But no matter how much it take, I got more to give. I know that this world is all I'm giving, and all of these thrills don't count for living. A little more will is all it takes, so I persevere, I'm not afraid. And right when it's falling off, not all is lost, it's giving me chills. I got a feeling, I gotta see stars and cars I'm whipping, cause none of my dreams involve a ceiling. I seen a child raise a village, and he didn't come from no privilege that made me conquer some limits. I've arisen from prisons, head on collision with visions I had back then, it was written. I've been walking in purpose, I've been coaching myself on life, telling me that it's worth it. It's some things I'm still gonna improve, and the timing is perfect. Still paranoid that I make it lose, like some toxic been lurking, anticipating my every move. On the back of my shirt is a target made to play me a fool, I won't fall to the serpent. Swear to God I've been working like a doctor and surgeon, trying to piece together the pieces and heal up what hurted. My vice suffice till it don't, it shows. My passion might lead me out to a life is an open door. Sometimes it just takes a little bit more to keep me right. Oh, wish you the best. If you ain't know this would be like, so I miss so much the days we was.
Welcome to the only show bringing cops and the community together with some real talk and some real listening. This is uncut. This is uncensored. This is Black and Blue Live. Hey, Black and Blue fam, what's going on? It's your boy Dale here. It has been a minute for Black and Blue Live. I've been a little busy doing a little this and a little of that, but hey, I am back, and I am wearing some different gear today. As you can see, I'm in my Laker gear because we got a Laker game coming on a little bit later, but that's later. Let's talk about today. I got a good one for you here today. Hey, how you guys been? I missed you guys. Hope you guys missed me on the live content. I still been releasing recorded content with some interviews, but today we got a good one, like I said. But hey, before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who's watching this on the platforms that we are on today. We are on Facebook, we are on YouTube, we are on LinkedIn, we are on Twitter. So hey, wherever you are watching this, make sure you like the show, you comment on the show, you leave questions for our guest today, because like I said, we got a real good one here for you today. And like I said, we've got a problem in this country. We've got a different country, unlike any other country in the world, where we allow firearms to proliferate our society, and that could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing, depending on what side of the fence you are on. And we've got some people on those different sides of the fences here today to talk about it. So without further ado, hey, let's get to it. All right, so my first guest here is a retired special agent with the United States Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Can't forget that. Everybody help me welcome to the show, Mr. Eric Harden.
Thank you,
Hey,
Bill.
how you doing, sir?
Me.
Absolutely.
I'm just fine, thank you.
What is going on with you?
I'm just enjoying retirement, my boys, and life.
Okay. All right. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you used to do, and you can talk about what you do now too as well, but what you used to do and how long you did it.
Okay, I am currently retired as I was a former special agent in charge of the Los Angeles Field Division for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I did that, meaning working as a special agent for 26 and a half years. Retired here in Los Angeles after two and a half years as the special agent in charge. And I covered the gambit from doing undercover, being an operator on our special response team, writing policy in Washington, D.C., and just interacting with the community, doing my best to identify, arrest, investigate, and target those who were at the highest propensity for committing violent acts, utilizing firearms against others.
Absolutely. Hey, and we appreciate your service and that you made it to the finish line. And what are you up to now?
I'm just retired, enjoying life. I stay active in working out daily. I enjoy watching television shows with my sons and my wife. I help her when I can or when needed in her business, Signorama. I put a plug in for her. She does sign business here in Santa Clarita Valley and across Los Angeles County. And I try to be a good friend, neighbor, and community participant here in Los Angeles County, keeping my nose clean, but also honoring those who continue to serve in law enforcement, and just hoping that and praying that there can be a balance struck in the ownership and utilization of firearms that continue to, when misused, plague our country.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you again. Appreciate you. Our next guest Our next guest is an advocate for firearms ownership. Everyone, please help me welcome to the show, Miss Antonia Okafor. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How's your day shaping out over there? And you were in Texas, right?
Yes, Houston, Texas.
H-Town.
Yeah, it's going well. It's a
All right,
sunny
so-
day here, so can't complain.
Yeah. Well, nobody listens anyway when you complain, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
All right. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how long you've been doing that.
Yeah, so I'm the Women's Outreach Director for Gun Owners of America. I've been at GOA, Gun Owners America, for the last 3-4 years now. But I've been doing advocacy work when it comes to gun rights and pushing a message that gun rights are women's rights since at least 2015, 2016 in Texas when I started my advocacy work with students, was pushing campus carry in college campuses based on that same idea that women on college campuses need to protect themselves. Sexual assaults occur primarily in a college woman's career during college, out on college campus. So that was my advocacy push. And as a sexual assault survivor myself, I've always been about empowering women. So that's been my avenue to empower women, is through gun rights, and I've been doing that ever since.
All right. Sounds like you've been doing some good work there. Appreciate you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Next guest here is a gun enthusiast, and he is out of the state of Virginia, but he'll tell you where he is at now and what he's doing over there. Everyone, please help us welcome to the show, Mr. Dow Valman. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. What's going on with you? I mentioned that you are not in the state of Virginia right now, so tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do, and where you at right now.
Well, currently I'm in the state of Florida. We just wrapped up a, a pretty big event down here. It's called Pew Party. I'm a co-owner of Pew Party, and we just had about 40 mainstream manufacturers on board in an event that helps people get into firearms, suppressors, and many other avenues associated with firearms ownership. I'm a 12-year Navy corpsman, so I used to be in the Navy as a combat medic. So I'm big on medical training as well. But I tend to be fall in the category of a firearms enthusiast, just helping people, educate people on how they can responsibly own firearms.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your services. I was saying there.
Thank you, sir.
When did you get out?
2014.
All right. So you've seen a bunch there during that time. So yeah, again, appreciate you and thank you for your service.
Yes, sir.
And last but certainly not least, we have a pastor out of the state of Pennsylvania. Everyone, please help us welcome to the show, Mr. Jay Delaney.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. What's going on out there in Philadelphia, where you were not born and raised?
Philadelphia is an interesting town. It's a lot going on. We're trying to get a new mayor. So this very topic is real big right now with every commercial that you see on television in Philadelphia. So it's kind of timely.
All right. And so you were a pastor. How long you been doing that sort of work?
A little over 20, maybe 23 years. I'm losing count. You see all the grays, right? But yeah, and it's been all urban, and so we see quite a lot in urban ministry, whether we want to or not. Yeah, definitely.
All right.
But it's all been in the Northeast.
Okay, yeah. And I appreciate you coming on and discussing this really important topic. So, all right.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So with that, hey, let's get to it. All right. So as you see in the banner there, it says America's gun culture looked at from all sides. Like they say, what we say in my line of work in law enforcement, there's three sides to every story. There's, your side, there's my side, and then there's the truth, right? So we'll try to get to that. And hey, again, like I said, everybody's watching the show here. Make sure you get your comments on for our guest here, and we will be sure that we answer those. But hey, first question, let me ask any of you guys. I'm sure for most of you guys, the question is going to be yes. But maybe, Jay, you might surprise us. Do you guys own any firearms? And if so, do you have a cache of weapons, or have you shot guns before? Let's start with you, Jay, because you'd probably be the most surprising out of all of us here.
I do not own any, so I'm probably not surprising anybody there. Um, I have shot once or twice, um, kind of recreationally, I guess, at a, what do you call it, shooting skeet. So
Okay.
that's the extent of my experience shooting.
Yep. Okay. Okay. And then Antonio, let's talk on your behalf. What you own guns, and if so, what kind of got you into gun ownership?
Oh man, as the good people know, usually yes, I do own firearms, but to tell you how many, I'm probably not going to tell you how many.
Okay. Yeah.
And you never reveal your gun
True
your
that. True
count.
that. Yeah. True that. More than one. More than one.
No,
Yes, more
not
than one.
not not when there's an ATF agent on the call.
Yeah, yeah, right. You're not
Retired.
gonna. I'm not gonna say the type.
Former.
Right, right. Um, yes. So yeah, but I didn't grow up with firearms at all. My parents are Nigerian immigrants, so that was just not. It was a foreign topic. It was just not something that even we talked about until I went to college. And because actually, I was anti-gun at that time when I went to college, and like I was saying, very much a feminist, very much female empowerment focused, helping women, domestic violence, sexual assault, and through that avenue of research and trying to help women realize that, I need to protect myself just so I could never be a victim again, but also that other women like me wouldn't be victims. So that was when I started my journey. But I didn't have the finances to get a firearm in college until a little bit outside of college, right? When I was in grad school. So that's kind of when I started. And that was first time I shot off my firearm was when I was 25 in grad school. So it's been about 8 years since then. But now I'm a firearms instructor, just became avert training certified. So it's been a long journey, but yeah.
All right. All right. What about Dow? What got you into firearms ownership? Was it before you were in the military?
No, so actually, so I'm a born foreigner. My first day in the U.S. was boot camp. So when I was integrated, so my first living experience in the U.S. was boot camp. So then when I integrated into the American society, I walked into a military exchange, is what they call it. It's like a store that the military has, and there were guns on the wall. And where I'm from, you can't have guns. I'm from the Caribbean. You can't have guns, not at least not those type of guns. And so I saw the guns and I asked, what did it take for me to buy one? And they told me, you just need your driver's license and a couple, another supporting document with your address. And I was like, really? I'm like, okay, well, let me get that one and that one, and that's how I started. Yeah. um, it was more of some curiosity. Um, Always had interest, never had access. So it was just curiosity, and then it exploded into what we are today, which I couldn't tell you what my inventory is. It's quite vast. So
All right. Yep. And we'll just skip over you, Eric, on that because I want to get into what you just said there. That you excuse me, you came from another country, and in that
yes,
country you weren't allowed to have the types of firearms that here in the U.S. you were able to, and you were interested in it, and you went in and you asked to purchase them, and they didn't ask you for much other than the ID and another supporting document. What do you think about that ease of access? And that's kind of what we've been talking about all the way up here in 2023. That ease of access to buying firearms. What is your view on that? We'll start with you, Dal, because you don't want to brought that up.
I think it's an absolutely beautiful thing. I think it's a beautiful thing. Um, so you do have to pass a background check. There's a common misconception that you do not, or there are avenues that you can take to skirt that. But those have commonly been proven to be fallacies. It's I have it's always interesting whenever individuals, tell me about these so-called loopholes, I often challenge people, how many guns have you bought? Because I've bought quite a few. you know, I have quite a lot of experience in acquiring firearms. So please measure up your firearm acquisition experience. Tell me, about those loopholes, right? So, but I think it's a beautiful thing. I come from a place where if you needed it, you couldn't have it, and and you know, to be honest, the reason I was a corpsman in the Navy is because I was not eligible for another job that I wanted because of my vision. My vision was damaged because I was a victim of an assault, you know. So that that affected my career. That affected my life, So in you know in in the U.S. you have the ability to have a force multiplier, right? And that is, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yep. Yep. And Eric, what is your views on the state of being able to walk into a firearm shop and with relative ease, as opposed to in other countries where you couldn't even go into a shop and purchase guns.
Well, as Dahl just explained, there was a background check involved. And me being a previous firearms owner prior to my employment with ATF, and I've owned firearms before, through, and after, I went through a background check. And I believe that since firearms are readily made available here in the United States, there should be a course or process involved. Dahl went through one. There's different processes in place in different parts of the country, and I believe that's a contentious issue right now. Whether you should have universal versus each state or each city or each municipality implementing their own policy as far as purchasing firearms. It's my belief and my position, non-committal to a position of ATF, that as a citizen of the United States, as someone who is allowed to purchase and come and go as I please with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that I can purchase a firearm if and when needed. However, there's responsibility and accountability afforded to that. And as long as I am responsible, accountable for the use or misuse of that firearm, then I have no objections to anyone owning, operating, and purchasing a firearm. But they must be non-prohibited, meaning if you have a prohibiting factor, then the law says you are not allowed to possess or own that firearm. And Dahl mentioned a loophole. I wouldn't call straw purchasing a loophole, but it is a mechanism that is in place that ATF investigated throughout my career and prior to, where a non-prohibited or non-criminal, a person who has a clean background, can be solicited to walk into a licensed dealer and obtain a firearm for someone who is prohibited or who is a criminal. And that's a violation of the law. So therefore, now the responsibility leaves the straw purchaser and goes into the hand of the criminal, who we know has other ideas on how and when to use it. So that's my position on that. I'll further state that laws are in place for a reason, and I believe the laws are in place because something happened. Something happened, usually that caused someone to put something in place to prevent it from happening again.
Yep.
So therefore, typically the law-abiding citizen is the one who's most affected by it, because law-abiding citizens, whether they agree with it or not, are the ones who are going to abide by the law. It's the criminal who is not going to, and therefore the criminal, whether the law's on the books or not, he or she will find a way to obtain that firearm, be it straw purchasing, burglary, robbery, or therefore. So I'm balanced in my approach. I believe there's a reasonableness that has to be in play. I'm not against the ownership or possession of firearms. I'm against the possession of firearms of people who should not have them.
Yep. And Tony, you were in a pretty free state of Texas where
firearms ownership isn't as restrictive as, say, here in California. What's your stance on gun laws and those sorts of things where you can purchase firearms like that?
Yeah, I mean, what he was talking about when he's acquiring firearms, like at the end of the day, it's always a background check, whether it's 4473 form. He has your driver's license to make sure his identity checked with what he was saying on the form, etc. It's the real big difference when it comes down to state by state is usually the waiting period, right? So, for
Mhm.
example, like you said, California, you're going to have that 10-day waiting period versus in Texas, the only you're waiting for is when ATF gives you the green light to say yes, that person can have that firearm. So usually that's the same time that you go into purchase, you're leaving with that firearm. But again, it's just because we have the NIC system that allows a reasonable time for you to be able to do that. But I just feel like when people ask that question, they make it seem like, oh, you're going from one state to another and it's completely different because there's a more thorough process or this or that. It's just they've added a more waiting time, even after they already said you're clear through the next check. On top of your time that you're saying that you're a good person to be able to have a firearm, that just creates more waiting for you who's just trying to use it in a legal, law-abiding way. So it's just an added restriction on top of the background check they already did, no matter what state you're in.
Absolutely. And Jay, have you said you've never owned a firearm? Is there some sort of reason behind that, even before you were a pastor? Why you never thought about that? I mean, you did grow up in New York, and you live in Philly, the urban side of Philly. So
Honestly, I never really thought about it. Yeah, my growing up was in D.C., um, in Southeast D.C., Chicago, South Side Chicago, New York, Manhattan, Brooklyn, and now I live in West Philadelphia. And it never really became something that I thought was needful. Nothing ever took me to a place of feeling like, yeah, I need to go ahead and consider this. Um, Even some of the stuff that we've experienced, we moved to Philadelphia about 3.5 years ago. And within the 2 block radius of where we are, a whole lot of crazy things have happened in the 3 years we've been here. Some have made national news, but it's just never been something that that I ever felt pressed about. Something I felt like I needed to have something for that level of protection. Um, I don't think I'm naive about it, but it's just never. I never really, it never occurred to me to go out and pick something up. My son lately, he's 35, has been saying, "Pop, look," because he knows what's going on in these streets, but it's just never became front of mind for me to go in that direction.
now,
I can't speak to the future, but it never has in all these years.
right now you're in the ministry, and you can't be, and you said you're not naive to think that things wouldn't happen on church grounds, because we've seen stories where even
Absolutely.
people in the congregation have
Yep.
opened fire within the church. Do you guys
Hmm.
have people armed in the church? Or are you against something like that happening, taking place?
Not in my current situation. In my previous situation from a few years back, where we were um, uh, worshiping, um, and I was an associate pastor. I know for a fact that the senior carries um, all the time. And there was probably at least one other person at the church, but it wasn't an organized process to have certain folks in the congregation uh, uh, tasked with being on watch and ready for something like that. Um, if things continue to go the way they are, that I fully expect to see a lot more of that in churches all over the country because it's possible. I mean, it's entirely possible. Um, Almost anywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's West Philadelphia or if it's Paducah. It can happen. So.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm on the safety team for my church, so
Mhm.
that's what we do.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
see safety teams where where like your security, your unarmed security, but you're saying there's safety teams that are armed in churches.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know of them um, in a couple places. Yeah, where that's what they're doing on Sunday morning. They're watching the door. Like you've got the classic format. You've got folks by the door, the ushers by the door, letting folks in and out. Um, but they're not necessarily the ones that are on that safety team. Um, because oftentimes they are not going to be the ones who would necessarily be um, skilled or armed or even interested. But there are those who are. It's almost. I kind of liken it almost to the um, air marshal type of a thought,
Mhm.
where
Yeah.
you don't really know where they are, but they're there.
But they're there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's a shame
Yeah,
that
when I
And
it's come to that. Yeah.
mhm,
yeah, I attend church and I'm not aware of a safety team, but I do know, having worked in law enforcement, I make it a point that when I do go to church, actually when I go anywhere, I'm pretty much armed. And when I'm at church, I sit to the rear where I can see any and everyone that enter and exit. And my back, of course, is at the window or the door, as we're trained in law enforcement, so that I can engage or act if and when needed, but in a safe manner where I'm not causing
mhm,
harm or threat to the innocent. So it's a fine line, but I'm armed any and everywhere that I'm allowed to be armed. And I say allowed because I know over the years, because of certain things that have happened in our country, where before I was able to carry my firearm on my person with me at a sporting event or at a concert or at a trade show, I can no longer now. And I've been checked at the gate and informed that I cannot bring my firearm with me, where I had no clue that that was the current standing. And when asked where can I store it, I was told take it back home or to your car, which was not reasonable or viable because I traveled 2+ hours to the location. So by
mhm,
me being former law enforcement, I was able to intelligently present my point of view and make contact with uniformed law enforcement who agreed to secure my weapon for me until I left the venue. So in today's climate, again, as a ATF agent when I was employed and as a retired ATF agent, I'm of the mindset that if you are capable, if you're trained properly, if you have the means to carry, because you never know when you may have to engage. And engaging means you're neutralizing a threat that poses a serious threat of bodily injury or harm to yourself or someone else. And I'm in the mindset that I'm going to take appropriate action to prevent that from happening to the best of my ability. And I respect others who have been trained similarly to do the same. So I'm and ATF has never been and never will be in the business of removing firearms from those who are lawfully and legally able to own and possess them. Our whole investigative plan and process has always been to identify and go after the worst of the worst, those who are previously convicted felons in the possession of firearms that have the strong intention of doing nothing more than causing harm on someone else. And that's been the position of ATF years past and years come. We do not spend time and effort identifying lawful owners and possessors of firearms. That's
Yeah.
not what we do, and we only enforce the laws that have been enacted by Congress, which typically allows us to go out, again, identify, investigate, arrest, seek prosecution of those who choose to be criminals and inflict bodily injury, harm, or death on others.
No doubt. No doubt.
Now, Eric, do you really think that's very? I mean, come on, you guys are not. You're not only enforcing the laws that are on the books, but you're also bureaucratically putting other types of policies that do add to the fact of who's law abiding or who's not. Like what we've already seen right now with ATF, with the definition changes of a pistol, a stock, all of those type of things. Like those things are enacted by the ATF. They're not through legislation.
No, the firearms technology branch, they make matters of decision on what is based on law, what is a firearm, what isn't a firearm, what can be or should be regulated. However, my expertise is in the business of the investigator, of the agent. And I can tell you, 26 and a half years, we spent our time and effort going after the worst of the worst. It wasn't the gun enthusiast, it wasn't the collector, unless there was information that said or pointing to the fact that the enthusiast or the collector or whoever was putting those firearms into the hands of criminals. Otherwise, that's not our focus, never has been. The violent criminal, the carjacker, the criminal street gang member who's terrorizing a neighborhood, the armed drug trafficker, the outlaw motorcycle gang biker, those are the types of people who we routinely went after and identifying who were posing the most serious threat of bodily harm, injury, or death to the public. And that's my position then, that's my position now. In spite
Yeah.
of, regardless of what firearms technology branch spends its time and effort doing.
Yep. Yep.
So you're saying the agent, that as an agent, that's where you were enforcing it, but you would agree though that the policy side, the ATF as a whole, is not completely only about enforcing, well, even the laws that they're putting on the books bureaucratically, is what you're saying, based on your experience as a special agent, which is just to focus on enforcing the policies that the ATF also adds to the books.
Right, there's
Is that what you're saying?
regulations. I'm saying there's regulation, there's policies, and I'm saying also that the people in headquarters, and I've worked in bureau headquarters, don't always get it right. I'll tell you that right
Yeah.
now. There's a lack of efficiency, effectiveness, or even reasonableness to a number of things that were done in headquarters. And I'm not trying to put down the agency that I work for that allowed me to provide for my family for years, but I do know that having worked there and worked in the branch that wrote policy that dictated or guided the agents in the field on how to conduct their investigations, things are always done the correct way. Things are always done the right way. There's a breakdown in communication with Main Justice. ATF oftentimes met with Main Justice to discuss various matters that affect the public as it relates to the possession and use of firearms. So it's nothing done unilaterally, it's done through conversations. And I can tell you, a lot of times the conversations were one sided. There is closed mindedness by some people, but as a whole, I believe law enforcement, I'm not just talking ATF, law enforcement as a whole works collectively and collaboratively to get things right.
Yep.
And that is to protect the public. It's not to remove firearms from law abiding citizens. It's to get the guns and firearms away from and out of the hands of those, again, who break the law, who criminally have intent to disrupt and destroy the lives of others.
Yep.
So
so I've
I have
seen.
a question.
Yeah. Real quick. Go ahead, Dale. Go ahead. Dale.
Real quick question. So how is it that one becomes, or how is it that one becomes a decision maker or a policy maker within the ATF? Because from the outside, it seems that a lot of times there seems to be a disconnect with the policy makers and the actual enforcers, which typically happens in all bureaucracies, right? So, but what is the process for one becoming a policymaker or let's say ATF enforces you know laws enacted by Congress, right? But then that has to be interpreted. Apparently, this is something that we see consistently. That has to be interpreted. So the law is enforced or enacted, and then that has to be interpreted. And it would seem from the outside that the ATF then has some type of leeway to create their own interpretation of that law. As what is your take on the individuals who guide the interpretation of said laws? How do they come into place?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, don't have a law background, but ATF
Mm,
does have lawyers or counsel within the Bureau that
mm,
often provide points of view and interpretation of the law. And there also is a collaboration and partnership with the United States Attorney's Office, where there are
mm,
lawyers who make it a career on criminal law. Those are the ones who receive our cases. They conduct review to make sure that the cases that we bring before them meet the elements of the offense to therefore indict and bring forth charges against the individual that was arrested for various offenses related to firearms, narcotics, arson, and or explosive laws. So the
mm,
interpretation, in my point of view, where there isn't a clear line of thought by the agent and or investigator on the regulatory side, there's collaborative thought process or discussion with the attorneys. The attorneys are in a position within ATF and the United States Attorney's Office, Department of Justice, to provide insight in how that law is interpreted and therefore implemented by we in the field who are going out to identify those who disrupt and cause harm through the use of firearms, arson, explosives, and what have you
mm.
to the general public.
Yep. Yep. Makes sense. Makes
Okay.
sense. Hey, and real quick, I've seen some interest or some chatter about felons, and we just spoke about that, felons not being able to purchase firearms, and I've seen some chatter about you know relinquishing that or getting away from that and allowing some felons to being able to purchase firearms in light of like the Nashville shooter or the Memphis shooter, where she walked in and got some firearms and ended up doing something and that person had nothing on her record. So who's to say that a felon who's convicted of I don't know what the regulations are, if it has to be a violent felony that you're convicted of, that you can't purchase firearms, or any felony, if it's check fraud, can you no longer purchase a firearm? What are your thoughts on that?
Mine, there's a release of disability that you have to apply for, and that's not decided by the agent in the field. It's decided by others in Bureau headquarters or in conjunction with the Department of Justice. But it's my feeling, again, going with the law, if you're prohibited, you're prohibited. And you shouldn't be in
Right.
possession of that firearm, regardless of what you have or haven't done that caused you to gain the felony. I have a cousin
Right.
who's a
Right.
felon, and
Right.
he's
Yeah, I know. I
prohibited
know
from.
what. Yeah, I know what the law is now. I'm saying the movement to abolish that, to allow some felons to be able to purchase. What are your thoughts, and any of you guys' thoughts on in the
Hmm.
future changing that law and allowing felons to being able to purchase firearms?
Well, we see like with the
But
marijuana, like state by state, Colorado, these places that have, people who have the marijuana cards, right? If you have it on paper, right, that you are able to purchase marijuana, you're not legally supposed to be able to also then buy a firearm. So you're seeing these people who maybe they're dealers, well, dealers, like
Right,
literal they dealers in the sense of the legal sense because it's legal in that state, but
right.
because they have that card that they're not allowed to go get their LTC or, their concealed carry, or be in possession of a firearm, because legally that you're not supposed to have that. It's on the 4473. So we're seeing a lot of people in those communities who want to protect themselves and maybe weren't even pro-gun before, but now they're like, oh, okay, now you're prohibiting me because you're treating me just as much as some other violent felon.
Right.
So it's a conversation right now that we're seeing.
And I think you
And the
touched on it,
conversation.
Dale.
Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. No, go right ahead.
Thanks. Thank you. I think you touched on it, Dale. The marshals came looking for some guy next door who killed somebody, like next door to our house. If he's convicted, he's a felon. He doesn't need to have a gun. But to your point, do I care that somebody who bounced 100 checks and would be considered a felon? Do I care if that person is allowed to carry a gun or not? I'm not as concerned about what that person might do if they go to Walmart and buy a gun necessarily. We'll talk about. I think we're going to get into the whole issue of mental health in a little while, but the kid that was next door who murdered somebody, that's a whole different question for me, with a whole different answer.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
So my take is, generalizing a felony is disingenuous, right? So, much like if I were to say, if you've committed a sin, then you cannot do X, Y, Z, right? So that logic is benign, right? So I think if an individual, acquires let's say gracefully acquires a felony, right? If an individual acquires a felony, then there has to be an
Gracefully.
evaluation. Gracefully acquires a felony. There has to be an evaluation of that felony to determine whether that qualifies
Hmm.
for the prohibition of certain things moving forward, right? But it cannot be a general thing where if you have a felony, then that automatically excludes you from something, right? There has to be an evaluation. They can possibly, I don't know if there are certain things like if I'm on the criminal investigation, that's going to delay my background check, right? So if I'm even just doing an investigation for a security clearance, that's gonna delay my background check, right? But it's not. So maybe if one is in the process of possibly getting a felony, there should be some red flags, right? Possibly until that person is I I don't know, until you have a clear cut case, right, or something, right? So that is in itself is a rabbit hole, because then you weaponize a what if to prohibit people, right? So it's a slippery slope, right? There are many things that could be done, but the problem is we have so many people with everyone has an agenda, whether that's on your side or the other side, right? Everyone has an agenda. The problem is weaponizing people to advance their agendas using tragedies in our society, right? Certain things happen, and then we use that to advance certain agendas. That is a common mechanism that we use in the American society, and a lot of times we skip the details. We just broaden things and we just throw titles on them, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we need to get away from that. So I don't think having a felony should prohibit you. You need to do a detailed evaluation of whether that felony qualifies for prohibition or not.
Yep. And you mentioned, tragedies being used by politicians to advance their agendas in this country. Hey, since we're talking about it already, let's talk about the mass shootings. Is the ones that's on front of mind for everybody in this country. Like I said in the beginning here, our country is a little different. We have the Second Amendment, and we can discuss that. And how is it, if it is or not viable in 2023 as opposed to when it was written in the 1700s. When we're talking about the sorts of weapons that are available now and that weren't available in the 1700s. What are you guys' thoughts on that and the availability of those weapons in relation to the Second Amendment?
Well, if I may on that, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say I'm probably the odd man out on this one, so I'll say something. Um, where we are in 2023 was inconceivable in 1779 or whatever, 76. I'm trying to remember when the amendment was written, but anyway, um, where we are now was completely inconceivable at that point in time. Um, and so the framers couldn't have really projected the conversations that I would suggest we should be having now. Um, and to stir the pot a little more, the Constitution and therefore the amendments are it's a living document. It's not etched in stone. And having said that, I would contend that it, at some point we probably need to be trying to figure out how to come up with a 29th amendment, the 28th or 29th, whatever the next one would be, um, to adjust how we look at how we deal in this society with the issue of weapons, guns in particular. What's the number now? 400 million guns, 350, somewhere in that general neighborhood. Um, the Constitution is the Second Amendment is not immune from amending. Is where I'm going, and do we need to be having the conversation that says what they wrote, and not even to get into the argument of the 20th century interpretation of the Second Amendment, how it changed stuff, but what they wrote in 1776 is really hard to apply in 2023, given where we are societally, given what we have access to in terms of firearms, um, and not to necessarily come down on the side of the argument about mental health, but um, it is part of the conversation in 2023 that it wasn't in 1776.
Yeah.
1776, everybody needed to have something so they could go out and get dinner. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
most aren't using firearms to go out and get dinner, and they're certainly not in need of an AR to go out and get dinner. But that's another part of the conversation. But yeah, my fundamental point is that I believe we should be having a conversation about how we amend the amendment so that it makes sense now, because it made sense in 1776.
Yeah. Yeah.
May I?
So
May I answer that?
there you go.
Everybody wants to jump in there
Go.
real quick before you guys jump in.
I,
Before
I
you
told
guys
you I was
jump
going
in,
to
let
stir
me
the pot.
yeah, exactly. Let me just say, when it was written, none of us on this panel were envisioned in that amendment, right? None of us
Yes.
that
Not at all.
Yeah,
look
but
like this, right? So
Okay.
carry
And
on,
that had
carry
to
on,
be amended.
So
carry on.
so the Bill of Rights, yeah. Well, okay. There's so many points I can go on this, but I'm just gonna start. So let's
Get him,
start
sis. Get him,
the
sis.
beginning. Let's let's go over the beginning. So I'm going to start from what you just said, Dale. Actually, because that's I think that's one of the questions too, and particularly in the Black community, because that's a conversation people, particularly on the gun control side, want to say about stuff like that, about the Second Amendment specifically. I mean, Carol Anderson wrote the second based on that of race and guns, trying to make it seem like because Black people were not the idea or not envisioned as equal to white people, then therefore the Second Amendment doesn't include us. It wasn't for us. That's like saying that any other Bill of Rights, a part of the Bill of Rights, or saying that free speech wasn't for Black people because that's what not the people, the framers who were writing it, didn't apply those rights that we all had as human beings to every person, whether that was a woman, whether that was a Black person, basically anybody who was not a white male who owned land. That was not
Wasn't
applied
applicable.
to them, but it was supposed to be for them. And we've fought through many wars and had to go through a lot of bloody things in order to get to the point where we are allowing that equal access. And so that's the Second Amendment was always for us. If anything, actually, it actually empowered more Black people, and we've seen through civil rights movement, we saw through even Black Panthers, etc., that was a reclaiming of many people of color in the South who were using firearms to protect themselves from a racist society that through permitting systems, through licensing systems, were trying to make it even harder for Black people to access the same firepower that white people had access to all that time. So the Second Amendment has always been for us. It is for us, and we're trying to have the same equality and access that white people have had this whole time. But due to gun control, we haven't had it even close to what we have now. So that's why we're seeing statistics of Black women being the fastest growing demographic of gun owners, because slowly a lot of those barriers, continuing monetary barriers, financial barriers, society barriers that had kept Black people traditionally from owning firearms are now coming down. And then with that, to say that the Bill of Rights, is particularly the Second Amendment, was not written for hunting. It never was. People want to make it seem like it was. It was never about,
Oh, I wasn't
even at
saying
that
that.
time. Well, you were saying that at the time that the technology was meant for, to have a like musket or whatever, was meant for to be able to to make your food, right? To buy to be able to buy a firearm to
One part
shoot
of it.
and kill what you were going to buy. So you can kill what you're going to kill rather. So, but at the end of the day, though, that technology, the framers had in mind that regardless of what technology was going to occur 200 years from then, 300 years from then, and even now in 2023, 200, 300 years from now, we're going to also have technology that we can't even fathom now. It doesn't change the fact that we have human rights that stay the course of time, that never change. And the framers knew that human nature never changes, and that's why they wrote those Bill of Rights in there. So it comes down to, at the end of the day, that the Second Amendment has been written because it was something that pre-existed the Bill of Rights. It was just affirming that the government was there to protect those rights, not that they were inventing some type of new right for people to have. It was to make sure that people knew that we already had these rights and the government of America was going to protect that right. So that's why the Second Amendment exists and is going to stay the same. And if anything, has only shown in the courts, particularly with DC v. Heller, with McDonald v. Chicago, all these big Supreme Court cases that happened in the last decade or so, to show that the Second Amendment is actually more in line with those who are pro-gun rights than pro-gun control.
Yep.
Okay, I'll get off.
Good stuff. So if I may, you know, Antonia has a lot more, I guess, legislative knowledge than I do, right? But
Me
I do
too.
believe the logic, though,
Or me.
the logic, though, the logic, though, is something that we can all identify on and agree on, right? So you said that the framers, I believe you said, would not have fathomed where we are today in 2023. But I challenge you to see that if the framers were here in 2023, I believe they'll be upgrading their guns. So um, so they would not
Yes.
they would
That
they
part.
would
That part.
not
Yeah.
default to I promise you, they would not default to a reduction in guns. If anything, they would definitely go back to work and say, okay, we need to upgrade our guns, right? So we live in a society where people are currently we currently live in a society where you can walk into a movie theater, right? You can walk into a movie theater. You can walk into a mall, a game. So one of the points you made is that people are not carrying weapons to go get something to eat. That is false. Our Eric on the panel
No, I
said he
didn't say
goes
that.
everywhere with his firearm. You said back then people would carry weapons to go get something to eat. Did you
Yeah,
not say that?
I did say that. I did say that, and then
Yeah.
that was a
Yes. Yes.
part of what I was
So so
saying. That was a
so
part of
so.
why they had guns.
Yeah, but currently, when I don't know, a lot of people on this panel carry weapons when they go to get something to eat, do they not?
Not in the
agree,
U.S.
people on the panel?
I carry everywhere.
So
Yeah. I think he meant
Antonia, when you
they
go,
use the
Antonia,
Getting
weapons.
into
Antonia,
definitions here.
Yeah. To get
Antonia,
their
and
food,
Yes.
to
Antonia,
kill their food.
Antonia, and
Sorry.
That's
so exactly,
yeah. You don't go to
Sorry, what were
exactly.
you
Ralph's and shoot
saying?
your
So
dinner.
yeah, so yes. However, in order to acquire food currently, people, a vast majority of people take weapons with them because the predators are different today than they are back then, right? And they've evolved, right? And so I challenge you that if in your congregation someone opened fire on your congregation, you would have my total respect if you would request that the police officers who came to respond did not bring more guns into the situation. You know, so if you had a situation at your church and we called 911 and said, hey, there's a guy, he's opening fire on people in my church, would you request that they, because there are already weapons here, don't bring any more weapons into this equation? It's that's a flawed logic, right? Um, the reality is we live in a world that is more dangerous than the framers ever imagined. It is more violent. They could have never fathomed it in your own words, right? What happens today, they could have never fathomed. And the only thing that they wrote that could even apply today is that. That is a fact, right? That is one of the things that they wrote that could be that transcends time. You know, is that in this time more than ever, one needs the ability to defend themselves against predators because predators are more than ever. And even in a time when we are the most restrictive with firearms, this is a time when we are in the American history. This is America's most restrictive time with firearms ownership. As you go back in time, you could buy you could buy machine guns off the counter. That doesn't happen today, right? That's not a reality. The media would make it seem that way, but that's not the reality. We live in a time where we are in our most restricted time when it comes to gun acquisition, yet in our most violent time. So the argument that the access is what drives it is benign. So, but again, I'm not a lawyer, but logic is logic.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say for now.
For now. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that Jay brought up was the AR-15, and right now that's the big hot topic, because there's the weapon of choice for a lot of mass shooters. Before that was the AK-47, and so those are the things that is in the media at least. What are you guys' thoughts on banning assault rifles like ARs and the like?
Me personally, and I'm not speaking as an ATF agent or former ATF agent, I'm just speaking as a law abiding citizen. The access is there already. You don't have to wait for a licensed dealer to provide access to firearms of any kind, any nature. They're out there. There's millions and millions of firearms that are accessible via, again, as I said before, through robbery, burglarizing, licensed dealer, theft. So the only prohibition or the inhibitor would be against the law-abiding citizen. If a ban were to be affected and put in place, it's the law-abiding citizen, the person who isn't prohibited, who would not have access to the AR-15 and other assault-type weapons. The criminal is going to find that assault weapon some way, somehow, and they're going to use it to commit a violent act. I go back to the North Hollywood shooting here in Los Angeles, where the two gunmen who entered the bank, they were outfitted head to toe in bulletproof attire, and they had automatic, high-powered assault weapons, and they were doing damage across North Hollywood like no other. And law enforcement that responded were undergunned. They could not effectively neutralize the two gunmen until one of the officers had the wherewithal to go to a local gun store that was in the area, and that owner gave assault type weapons to the officers so they could at least meet the threat equally. And then it gave time for LAPD SWAT personnel to get on scene who had the appropriate firepower. So, again, me personally, I don't believe a ban is the answer to limiting, prohibiting, or stopping mass shooting in and throughout this country. I believe that it's necessary for folks to have the wherewithal to hold people accountable. And if you're in possession or own those type of weapons, I don't have one, I don't need one. I believe I'm effective utilizing the weapons I have in neutralizing any threat that I'm faced with. However, it is a weapon of choice of many. And if that's the position of the many, and there are ATF agents I know to this date that have assault weapons, they're just enthusiasts. They want those weapons. There's some who don't have them but would like to have them. I believe they're responsible enough to have them. So the question or the answer for me is you need to be responsible, you need to be held accountable, you need to safely secure those weapons as you would secure anything. As you would secure your car keys from an unlicensed, non-trained driver, as you would from a person who has no skill, no interest, no wherewithal to fly an airplane. There's training involved in many aspects of things that we do, and if the proper training is conducted and is shown that the individual has the propensity to respectfully and securely and safely own and operate that item, be it a firearm, an airplane, a train, or what have you, then only then will I have the respect for that person to be a possessor of. So again, the guns are out there. The criminal's going to find the AR-15 and other firearms like that when and if they want them. I don't believe the law-abiding citizen should be prohibited because North Hollywood, those officers needed a similar type of weapon to meet the threat that was being delivered upon them by those two bank robbers in North Hollywood.
Yep. Yep. And Tony, I know you wanted to jump in there.
My face just looks like I need to. It probably does. Yeah. First of all, I'm just kidding. No. First of all, I was gonna say, when you talked about, I mean, it'd be interesting to find out if there really was an assault weapon, or rather, like assault rifle, which is automatic, rather, because assault weapon usually tends to be, in definition terms, rather more an automatic weapon, which automatic weapons have been banned in new production since the 80s, since the Human Amendment. So if it is grandfathered in, those are thousands of dollars. So I'm not sure if it really was an automatic weapon, but those are really hard to find if they do. But even
You
more
can
so, I
alter
think there's
cheaply.
you can't.
I didn't mean to
Well,
interrupt you, but
can't do it
you can alter.
with what?
Drop-in auto sears will allow you to alter a firearm to allow it to fire in succession, meaning automatic, with automatic repeat fire.
Okay. All right. So I'm just saying, if they really had that, that's, again, it was obviously they're criminals. They're not doing it. Like, all of those are laws that have already been in place that have been banned. So I, but to add to that conversation, there's a lot of talk right now, like the AR-15. I mean, the AR does not mean assault rifle; it means Armalite. It's the person who, or company, that actually had the patent for an AR-15. So people right there, though, are turned off when they hear that term because they think it's some automatic weapon or automatic rifle, but it's not. It's a semi-automatic. Just for those who are listening, I know it's not for us who most have knowledge on that, but those who are listening, I like to educate that it's one round that is ejected every time you pull the trigger. And so that's a semi-automatic, just like a handgun. But the rifle allows you longer distance. That's really the biggest, I would say, advantage, is besides the looks, is that it allows you that proficiency in a longer range of of sight. And so what I found with that, especially with women and training women, is that the AR-15 has been something that a lot of women love to, like, they don't think they're going to love it because it's this big scary gun in the media, but it's something that a lot of them feel like it's easier for them to handle because the recoil is dispersed in a better way, using the shoulder versus just using their hands, or the grip is not as much of an issue with that. And so I found people, whether they have an issue with their hand grip or arthritis or whatever, to women, just everyday women or smaller women who want to be able to use a firearm to take that recoil, mitigate that recoil better than a handgun. It's been, I say, a more popular choice as women become gun owners, and as I teach women to this day.
Nice. Now, would you
Just
say
another-
that? Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to offer that one difference with the AR type and a handgun is the round velocity. A 223 round will travel a greater distance and have greater impact on the object, or in the case when these mass shooters are using them to commit violent acts at malls or stores or schools, on destroying the flesh of the person than a 9mm round might do, or a 40 caliber might do. That's one of the major differences. Again, I'm not saying to ban the weapon for that reason, but that is a fact that the 223 round or 7.62 round will have greater damage than a 9mm or 40 or 45 caliber round.
Jay, are you lost, Jay?
No. No.
Talking about 223s and 40.
I'm learning.
Yeah.
So if I
have
may,
argument.
a slight addition to what Eric said, that damage on flesh is typically done at that greater damage on flesh is typically done at longer distances. Typically, you find a lot more pass-throughs with FIFA because of its velocity. You find a lot more pass-throughs at closer ranges, which most people engage at closer ranges because a building is considered a closer range. Closer ranges, you typically have pass-throughs on flesh. As someone who has dealt with a lot of firearm-related wounds, so contrary to popular belief, you may find a greater wound cavity with some of the slower moving rounds on flesh within those distances. But as you increase distance, then you start losing power. You start when these projectiles impact flesh, you start to see a lot more difference because actually the round has slowed down significantly from that hypersonic, somewhat hypersonic, supersonic, hypersonic velocity at a closer range. It's slowed down significantly at a longer distance, which enables it to create that wound cavity. So at closer ranges, you may find a little bit more dramatic wounds from 9mm and 45. So yeah.
Yep. And we were talking about people acquiring these weapons, and most of them in the news recently have been those on mental health, either evals or needing to be evaled for mental health states, acquiring these weapons. And part of these background checks, or at least the controversy or the debate on that, red flag laws. What are you guys' stance on red flag laws as it pertains to mental health and being able to purchase firearms?
Well,
Yeah.
I will speak to the fact that I don't have any mental issues, so that I'm aware of, and hence I'm not prohibited. I'm not versed in the red flag laws, other than understanding that a red flag says that this person possibly should not be in possession of or have access to firearms because of some mental prohibition. Is that correct, Dale?
Yeah, well, not only that, but people can report those red flags to law enforcement, which goes into a database, which would then prohibit someone from purchasing a firearm. It could be your neighbor, it could be a teacher, it could be, you know, anyone, you know. So what are you guys' thoughts on that? I'm sure that's the debate, and those things can be, you know, meted down to, you know, who can report and who can't. You know, obviously, you know, mental health professionals, if they, you know, if they have a session with someone and they, you know, and they see that someone isn't fit to own a firearm, and then they can report that. But, you know, you start getting into teachers and you know, your boss and things like that, you know, that's a slippery slope.
And I would
Yeah,
agree.
and
And
it
I
depends
would
a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Antonia.
I was gonna say it depends a lot on the state who implements a red flag law. So, for example, I used to live in Colorado, and I was there during the pandemic when they implemented their red flag law, which unfortunately, you know, on both sides of the aisle, thought were good or bad, etc. So, and narrowly passed Colorado. It was actually a pretty big deal. A lot of even the sheriff's department didn't want that. The biggest reason in Colorado specifically because the sheriff's department has a pretty big. I mean, they're elected, and it's county by county. These type of state laws that are passed, particularly in Colorado, the sheriff especially with the red flag law, is the one who makes that big deal. And I know specifically in the county that I was living in, Weld County, the Weld County sheriff was adamantly opposed, and GOA also adamantly opposed, completely agreed with him, because one of the big things, other than being unconstitutional in many ways, is that even implementing that as a sheriff's department, it is adding risk to his own people to implement a red flag law where the situation is ex parte. So when you go to court, when that person, like you said, so for most people who don't know our red flag laws, I'll go really quickly overview. So it's when, like you were saying, when a acquaintance, I think the law in Colorado was up to 6 months. You had to have known them for at least 6 months. So it could be someone that you were, someone that you were, sorry, kind of long, someone that you knew acquaintance wise, or lived with for a while, an ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend. So it could be family member, it could be a friend, anyway, someone who's close in that vicinity to you in your life. They can report you and say that you are dangerous to yourself or someone else based on their own belief. And so that then goes to a judge in a court, and it's ex parte, meaning that you're not invited, don't need to be invited to be there. Most likely you're not going to be there at that court to be able to defend yourself. And the judge makes, based on the evidence that they have, they implement that order and say, okay, sheriff department, you can enforce it. You can, for right now, we allow you to go into that person's home, seize their firearms, any firearms that they have, and then take them away from them. That person then has to go back and fight for that right to get their firearms back. That can take up to a year. And then in Colorado law, again, which is considered the standard law for many, a picture perfect law for many who want to implement more red flag laws, that same person gets no type of recourse or no type of consequence for continuing to report that person, even if they found that person shouldn't have reported in the first place. So that person can continue to report them year after year, where that person has to pay their own money to get their firearms back. So again, that's I mean, just there alone is the application of the real life red flag law. In theory, may have sounded great in just theory on the surface, but the actual implementation to be able to do that effectively is a constitutional nightmare, and it's completely unconstitutional, and it's also dangerous in practice.
Yep. I'll say as an active police officer now, we don't have red flag laws per se here in California, but what we do try to do is, if we respond to a call of, say, domestic violence or of a mental health situation, and we realize and we get information that that person has guns, what we will do is try to secure them while we're on the scene. And then, so we will book those into evidence, and then that person, like you said, Antonio, then has to fight to get those guns back, which is a pretty uphill battle to fight right there if they, you know, especially in a mental health situation. But if there's a red flag law where, you know, it went through an ex parte hearing and then the judge said, yeah, this person shouldn't have guns, and then now we're going to go to the person's house afterwards, I don't see that working out.
No, I agree.
And there's many examples where it did not work out and people have died. So
Yeah. Doesn't sound safe.
Yeah, I actually had a situation where someone, made a claim about me to the police, and I had the police come to my house. They claimed that I was potentially another mass shooter. So the police showed up to my house. And I was working on some stuff, and I heard the doorbell ring. I'm like, must be a delivery or something. But I'm not of the practice of just opening my door, So I check out what's out there, and I noticed that it's cops, and I was like, So when I engage, they tell me, hey, I want to talk to you. So they say, hey, do you mind if you step outside? And I say, well, I need to know what we're doing first. I need to know, what's happening first. Give me some insight on what we're doing first. Let me get your name, a card. Let me get some information. But I think that not many people have the ability. I know that I'm a decent communicator, so I typically can not be aggressive, but still take control of a situation, right? So I was able to take control of that situation very effectively, to the point that they came in, sat down. I was armed, I was armed. I let them know I was armed, but by our conversation, I think everybody was at ease that there was not any threat. I actually verbally explained that, listen, I intend you no harm, but let's figure out what's going on here, and let's see, what we can do about it. How can we fix it? I'm here to help. So able to take charge of that. Not many people have that. So when you have people, doing red flag laws, just the other day, actually, for a Pew Party, we did some stuff. We brought in a pretty huge. We brought in a few $1 million in guns into this small area in Florida, right? And so one of the things we did is we had a social where we parked a Humvee with a belt-fed 50 cal, full auto 50 caliber machine gun mounted to the top, and we parked that in front of the place that we were having our social. So as you can imagine, the police showed up.
You don't say.
So the police showed up, right?
I mean,
But
you see
but
those
as
every day, so.
When we were having this, we're outside, we're making this little video, and this guy has some helmet on with night vision on and that kind of stuff. And while I'm making the video, the police are showing up in the background. I see the lights coming in, right? But here's the difference. Again, I consider myself to be a good communicator, right? So I didn't even wait for them to engage. I initiated conversation. Hey, gentlemen, how may I help? We said, hey, we had a call. They said there's something going on there. You guys need to go there right now. And it ended with guys coming in defensively or a little bit cautious from what they heard over their radio call. It ended photo shoots with the police, and it ended in a fun, laughable situation, right? But again, being able to communicate effectively and take charge of a situation is not a skill that many possess. And so to think that it's going to end that way for everyone's situation is irresponsible, right? So we have to have precautions and not weaponize people and give them the ability to initiate situations that could potentially end in the irresponsible and negligent loss of life.
Yeah. I will say real quick before we move on, just from speaking with you here for the little bit of time we've been together here, Dal, that
Yeah.
that accent really puts people at ease. Let me tell you that right now.
It's soothing. Hey, well, hey, what's going on? You know.
I'm more like, yeah, bro, whatever you want, man, you got it. You good.
Yeah, hey, yeah. I've wiggled my way out of a lot of situations. Trust me.
Hey, let me
So,
let me get a comment on before we get to our trivia here real quick. And this one's from, if I can get my cursor on it, from Jay Harden. I don't know if that's James Harden taking a break from preparing for the series here with the Boston. He asked, what methods do the guests think should be taken to protect schools directly and immediately, considering guns aren't going anywhere?
Good
Thoughts on that?
question.
Anybody
I
jump
think
I
if
in?
you
will
take the same approach,
Hmm.
I think if you take
go
the same
ahead, Bobby.
approach I think if you take the same approach that Congress takes when they have mass people in rooms, I think you'll be good to go. That's a pretty simple solution, but you can take it away, Eric.
No, I think the same importance or level of importance should be taken that venues use at concerts, at trade shows. I mean, schools should be a protected environment for our kids. And why shouldn't they be afforded the same opportunity of safety that I have when I go to a sporting event or to a trade show or to even Disneyland, an amusement park, where I'm told that I can no longer carry my firearm with me into the venue. So I know it's costly, but funds should be made available to allow for similar, maybe not to the same scale, but some form of security where firearms are detected or can be detected prior to entry onto the campus. And I don't mean arming every administrative person on campus. I mean doing exactly that. When I go to Disneyland, every employee at Disneyland is not armed, but before I can get onto the Disneyland campus, I'm uh, searched. I go to a magnetometer, and when I did have my firearm with me, I told them I had the firearm. He told me I had to secure it. So the same thing could be done, or something similar, I believe, for schools. Since guns aren't going anywhere, we can afford similar protection at the schools. That would, I
Yep.
believe, directly affect the type, number, or even any firearm entering that campus.
Yeah. Yeah, let me say something like Jay said earlier, where there are congregations where you don't know some people are armed. I'm sure when you go to Disneyland, you got Goofy and Mickey.
Oh,
They strapped. Mickey strapped.
So what baffles me is that people ask me this so many times. What solution, what could it be? And I'm like, the same solution that every situation where people have been harmed recklessly. It's the same solution. It's the same problem. Why are we looking at this like it's a different problem, right? In if you look back in history, there was a problem with people going into banks and coming in there with guns and shooting up people and taking money. That problem is not happening today. What was the solution? There was there are many incidents in history where we had issues with guns being used against innocent individuals, and those they were solutions. Those solutions happened. So it always I always smile at this question. What is the solution? I'm like, no, let's guess. I don't know. you know.
Yeah. Yeah. All
Well,
right.
Yeah.
maybe to baffle
So
you more, I would suggest maybe that is a place for a good use of, uh, and I don't have the answer to directly to it, but a good use of AI at some point to figure out how, as Eric was touching on, um, detection, using AI for good and not evil for a change.
yeah,
So,
Yep.
yeah,
Instead of doing these remix with Biggie raps,
how
AI
about
doing
that?
yeah.
that,
So
they can do that.
but I would challenge that detection is half of the solution, right? You first have to detect, but then what, right?
Neutralize.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
you know,
neutralize.
exactly. So I mean,
Yeah,
there
just like
are,
you said with
there
banks.
can,
Just like you
yeah,
said with
there
banks, they
can
have
be,
those metal detectors. They've got
yeah.
closing revolving doors. They've got bulletproof windows. They've got all that sort of stuff. So yeah, yeah.
So I'm
Yeah, and
all
I would
for
say,
non-lethal solutions. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was gonna say, as a mom, especially in Nashville, my kids are 2.5 and 1, so they're just like that Baptist, early learning center and everything. So the first thing I did, that one really hit close to home because I'm a mom and I could have been my kids, hearing about that.
Hmm.
And so the first thing I did was I talked to the director. I was like, look, this just happened literally in Nashville, the same type of setup that you guys have. What are you guys doing? Because a lot of these schools, most of what they'll do, if they have an armed guard, not in schools, right? It doesn't just mean K through 12. It means daycare. It means anything in that situation.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it usually means gun-free zone. So that's really what we're dealing with because of legislation that keeps them from doing a lot of that stuff. But what can you do even before we talk about? Because that's the first thing people want to do is, well, Congress needs to do something about this. Look, like if you are waiting for Congress to be saving the day for you, you're going to be waiting forever because it comes down to where you live. It comes down to your community. What can you do? And I think people feel defeated because they think they have to wait for someone else to do something. No, you guys can do something. So I spoke with the director. I was like, look, I don't know. I was gonna say I have a certain set of skills, and
Hmm.
and I would be willing to help you guys out for free, to make sure that you guys have the training that you need to have. It's mostly women, mostly teachers, that
Hmm.
maybe their husbands know something about firearms a lot of the times, but most of the time they're just scared to even have this conversation. And then again, funding is an issue. So I would say if you, instructors, like when you guys hear about mass shootings like this, offer your help to these people. Like do a pro bono. If we got to be in the pro bono world. Like there are so many people who really want that help, the training they need, so that they can have at least some semblance of, I mean, should we keep the door open at this time? Do we have bulletproof doors? A lot of these types of schools have these clear doors that are not bulletproof. And we saw in Nashville, she was shooting through these
Look at
glass doors. And they still, a lot of schools have those glass doors. So, um, so now at this point now I can tell you that they already have a stop the bleed class ready to go. They're going to have one in the next month. They're going to be doing fundraising to change out the doors, change out the back system. We have to look at these horrible, unfortunately horrible situations, but learn from those situations of what not to do even before we talk about guns or no guns. Like at the end of the day, we got to have security down, just like you said, with any other place, have security down,
You're right.
and then
Yep.
on top of that, have what we need to make sure if that person gets in, you have a plan and a system of what to do, of how to stop the bleed. Have tourniquets. I mean, people even have all those types of necessities that people are bleeding out, like we saw in Uvalde, before the police get there, or even if they get there, they're not able to give EMS the go ahead because they still have to secure the active shooter. So
Yeah.
kids are bleeding out when it could have been a teacher. Maybe they don't have a firearm. Maybe they don't want to have a firearm. Fine. But if you are going to be protecting my children, you need to at least have some type of skill. And that means maybe making sure that kid doesn't bleed out. So that's the type of stuff we need to be talking about more, not always about what gun laws we need to put on the books or what gun laws we need to take off the books. It's what we need to be doing as a community and having the skills to help our community where we're at.
Well said. Well said. Well said. All right, guys. Hey, I appreciate you guys coming on to the live today, and one of you at short notice. Hey, but before I get you out of here, remember I told you guys we're gonna do some trivia here, lighten the mood here a little bit. Not that the mood got tense, but what we're gonna do here is this is family game night here, and what we're gonna do here is we're gonna play something called like password or something where I'm sure you've seen the game where I'm gonna match you guys up as teams. So Eric and Jay, you guys will be one team. Antonia and Dal, you guys will be another team. One of you guys will pick something of these categories, and you're gonna be able to, without saying what the word is, to get your partner to say what you're trying to describe. I'm sure you've seen games like that before. So you say everything except the word, and you will get points. This is all automated here. So we'll get Eric and Jay. You guys will go first. Eric, you will be saying the word, and Jay, you will be trying to guess the word. So
Okay.
you can see here. Let me put this full screen here so you can pick your category here. If you see anything that you think you can work with, just let me know. You got everything. You got movies. You got Star Wars. You got Harry Potter. You guys look like Harry Potter guys.
So TV shows.
TV shows. Okay, we got two categories. We got TV shows in general, and I think there's another one here that says 70s and 80s TV. Which one you want?
Let's just go TV shows in general.
TV shows in general. All right. Get that loaded up. And what I'm going to do, Jay, so that you don't see the word here, I'm going to turn off your screen. You can no longer see the game, right?
Correct.
Correct, Jay? All right.
Correct,
Everyone else can see the game, so we are going to get started here. And here we go. Go ahead, Eric. You're on the timer. Go ahead, Eric. You see that? Say pass if you can't get it. You're on the timer. You see
Pass.
that timer going?
Pass.
Pass that one. All right.
Futuristic.
Star Trek. Deep
Dark.
Space Nine.
You good with that one? You good with that
Did
one?
you say dark?
Dark.
You want to pass?
Quantum Leap.
Pass.
And this wasn't a good category for you.
Puppets.
Sesame Street.
Puppets.
Sesame Street.
Sesame
The Muppets.
Street.
Oh, he did say the Muppets. Yes.
You get that one?
Yep. Oh. So I was hitting the wrong button. It says you got 3 out of 5 right, but you actually only got 1 out of 5 right. So let me give you guys the score if you see there. You both got one 1 point there. So not too hard to top that one there, Tony and Dow.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we'll see. All right. So Antonio, you will be speaking the word, and Dow, you will be the person trying to say the word. Here's your categories here. Let me make this full screen here for you again. We got again movies and Star Wars and Harry Potter, food, K-pop, animals, TV shows.
I would say, let's see, animals.
Animals. Okay.
Oh, come on. Wait, who's picking it? Oh, I have to say it, and he's gonna guess it.
Yeah, he's gonna guess whatever you're trying to say.
Okay.
So let me turn off your screen. You can no
Gotta get
longer
my
see Dow, right?
2.5-year-old here.
Dow, you can no longer see, correct?
Correct.
All right, here we go. You ready? Here we go.
Ready.
Monkey.
All right. Yeah. He can't see you. You got to say something.
Can't see
he can't
you.
see
Oh,
you.
he can't see me. Okay. Okay. Pass. Oh. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Chomp, chomp, chomp. No. Okay. Okay. Pass.
Pass. All right. Come on, you got 20 seconds left.
Happy Feet. The movie Happy Feet.
Penguins.
Yes.
They need us already.
It was the teacher in Finding Nemo. The teacher that was holding all the fish.
A blowfish?
He was gliding.
Oh.
No.
Turtle?
It was a stingray.
Oh.
It was a stingray, but you got 2 right. 2 out of 5. So let's give you guys the points there.
They killed us.
They killed you.
Yeah.
Well, now you guys can redeem yourself. Now, Eric, you will be guessing, while Jay, you will be you will be saying here. So let me turn off your screen there, Eric.
Alrighty.
Well, let me give you a chance to pick as well. So, okay, You guys ready to pick? Here you go. Let me full screen. What you got here? What you want? Animals, TV shows, countries, U.S. geography, cartoon characters, kids movies, world cities, video games, brands, football, fictional characters, Disney.
Go back up. Go back up. No, further down.
Oh, further down. Okay.
Right there.
What do you want? Automotive.
Let me do. What was that? U.S. geography.
That is. There was U.S. geography. U.S. geography. Yep, right there. You want that?
We'll skip that. Let's go. Let's go with football.
Football. Okay. Football. It is.
U.S. football, right? It was up further.
There it is.
There
U.S.
you go.
football. There we go. All right. And let me turn off your screen there, Eric. All right. So you ready? Let's get you going. Eric,
Ready.
you can't see, right?
I cannot see.
Okay. So here we go. And go.
Oh, that's a clue.
That is a clue. You got to get them to say that.
Pass.
Pass.
Using your feet.
The kicker. Kicking.
Make someone fall.
Tackle. Trip.
Trip. Yes.
Pass.
Come on. Come on.
Number 15. Green Bay Packers. Quarterback.
Quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, number 12.
Old. Dead.
You want to pass, Jay?
Pass.
Newt Rugby.
Oh man.
The team where I live.
The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, you missed it. Oh.
Other end of the state.
Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles. All right. So. Okay, so you guys got 1 point.
Set the same bar.
So now it's all tied up. So. All right, Antonio and Dow, all you got to do is get 1 point, and you guys are in. All right, you guys win the game here. So pick a category.
US geography.
Yeah, right. We got Disney. We got 2000s music, 90s kids, basketball, 80s music, Hollywood celebrities.
Let's
baseball.
do 90s kids.
90s kids. Okay. All right.
Boy.
So Antonio, you were.
Oh
No?
wait, that's not good for me because it's probably American. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Never mind.
All right.
Okay. Let's
Baseball,
see.
celebrities, U.S. capitals, state capitals, candy, 70s, 80s music, in the kitchen, national parks, Broadway musicals, books in the Bible. Maybe you should have picked that one, Jay. Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's
We'll pick some Star Wars, movies, food. How
Let's
about
do food. Yeah, let's do food.
Food.
Yeah.
All right. So who's going to be guessing? That is
Me.
no, yeah, you're going to be guessing. So let me turn off your screen. All right, there you go. Right there. So you can no longer see, right?
Correct.
All right. So you ready here, there, Dow? Here we go.
I'm gonna try.
All right, here we go. All you need is 1 point. 1 point, and you got this.
We got to say it like that.
All right, so, so in foreign countries we call it biscuits.
Oh, cookies.
What-
There we go. But
Nope,
it's the one with the dark color.
Oh, chocolate cookies, the dark color. Black and white.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oreos.
You're on the right. You're on the right. No, you're on the right trend with your first thing. But there's a little nugget in there of that thing. Skip.
Oh, skip. Yeah.
Skip. Oh, but cookies go with what?
Milk.
Oh,
they might not get that point.
I'm for it. So
Oh,
it's very
man.
cold. It's very cold. It melts in your mouth. Very cold. Melts in your mouth.
Ice cream.
Yeah,
There we go.
At the buzzer.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
At the buzzer. They got the points. They got the points. Yes, and
Oh
we,
man. Cashews.
yeah. No, you guys won. You guys are the winners. Wow, that was torture.
I was trying to play on that Nigerian background. You know, I said maybe she know what biscuits are.
Wait, what were you saying?
He's trying to say chocolate chip
no.
cookies.
Biscuits.
Chocolate chip cookie. Yeah, but I didn't know how to describe that without saying that. I'm
Man,
foreign, so I don't. Yeah.
There should have been a gun category on there, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Y'all would have gotten 100 points on that.
Everybody but me.
Yeah, well, there was the Bible category there too. So
No, but
I was gonna say.
the armed in Christ. There we go.
yes, armed in Christ. There we go. Hey guys, before I get
Like that. Yeah.
love it,
Yes,
love it.
exactly. Spirit of the
Right.
spirit, word of the spirit.
Yes. Hey guys, before I get you out of here, how about some words of wisdom for the audience? We'll start with you, Eric.
I wrote something down here. Gun laws are typically adhered to and affect the law abiding pre and before. We comply with and therefore are inhibited, not restricted in the process of acquiring, possessing, and owning. On the other hand, gun laws are meant to restrict unlawful possessors that typically refer to criminals, requiring an affected post with investigation, arrest, successful prosecution, and ultimately sentencing. My point is, firearms should be and always will be, in my opinion, made available to the law abiding. It's the criminals who have access to them, and any and all means that law enforcement can do to keep firearms out of the hands of the criminals should be done, but it's done through effective communication with our clergy, with the community, and with the law abiding to ensure that the Second Amendment right is adhered to and allow all who are prohibited to possess and own firearms, and then that those who are prohibited, we keep those firearms out of their hands so that we don't have the destruction that often takes place with these mass or active shootings.
Good words to live by. Antonia.
So it comes down to your local community. At the end of the day, the most change that you can make is in your back door. It's in where you live. So when it comes down to it, your advocacy, although you should pay attention to what's happening with representatives that are happening in DC, even in your state capital, the most change you can make is in your hometown. So look for ways that you can do that, acquire the skills that you need to protect yourself and your family, and have that access and enable that for other people who are less fortunate than yourselves. And that's why it's important to restrict or to take away restrictions that keep other people, particularly those who have historically not been able to access firearms, to be able to do so they can have every right to protect themselves just like anybody else can.
Love it. Good words. Yeah.
I would say knowledge is power. So the more that's in your brain, the more solid you will be in this world, right? So if you a fool with a hammer can build very little things, So just make sure that when you're casting judgment, seek understanding first, right? Learn about what you're trying to. Some of us are trying to cast judgment, for example, on gun owners. Learn about gun ownership. Learn about that thing before you try to have a strong opinion about it. Because I guarantee you, in most situations in anyone's life, when you seek more information, your perspective may change drastically. That's about it.
Nice. And Jay.
Two things. We didn't get to it, but I would say of concern for me, something that's top of mind is the whole conversation about mental health as relates to guns. Um, Nobody seems to have mental health issues until they snap, until they do. So we need to address it, but it's not singular. And then secondly, I would love to see us have just better balance in how we even approach the whole conversation down the road.
Well said. Yep. Like I said, we've got a long way to go. This country's been was founded on a number of things, and one of those being firearms and firearms ownership and firearms possession. And so long as we have that right, there are going to be people like Eric and Antonia and Dow that will fight for that right. And then there will be others on the other side of that to at least want to make sure that those things are regulated, and so that we don't have tragedies. And we've come up with some good solutions today that hopefully some of our lawmakers watching this show will take into account. All right. So again, hey, I appreciate you guys, and don't go anywhere. I'm going to sign off, and I'll be right back. Hey guys, that was a great conversation today I had with both sides of this equation of gun control and gun ownership. Hey, I hope you guys liked this conversation as much as I did. If you guys did, hey, make sure you share this video. And if you're watching on the replay, make sure that you like it and you share it and you do all that. Let everybody know about this conversation that we had today about gun ownership and gun control. Hey, my name is Dale. I do this every other week with great panels of guests. Hopefully you'll be here next time if you didn't get to see it live. Catch me on the replay. Till next time, my name is Dale. Black and blue, right there. I got a Laker game to get to, so I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
Smoke spirals off your cigarette. Door slammed to figure silhouettes. Is this over? Is this over? Is this over? Can this be over now? Is this over? Is this over? Is this over? Can this be over now? Baby, I surrender.